All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome in. Farzin Vasugian here with you for another episode of the Chief Zone podcast. It is near the end of July, training camp underway. I believe every NFL team now has training camp underway with the exception of maybe one or two. So, yes, football season is in full swing. We've had highlight reels. We've had fights on the field. We've had all kinds of things. That is when you know football season is back. Appreciate you guys taking the time to download and listen to this episode of the Chief Zone podcast. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, appreciate all of you guys who tuned in to the archive version. For all of you listening and watching live on Facebook and YouTube, big thanks to all of you guys for joining in on the program, watching live. Always appreciate everyone tuning in, whether live or watching later on. And if you miss any part of the show, you can always watch or listen to the rest of it later as well. So I appreciate all of you guys who are taking in the podcast, however it is you guys do so. A lot to get into here on today's episode of the Chief Zone podcast. Obviously, going to be talking about the first 4 days of training camp. The team has been, the quarterbacks and rookies have been there for a week, but everyone, vets, everyone all together, they've been practicing for 4 days now. They're going to be off tomorrow. What have we learned about the Kansas City Chiefs so far up to this point? Kind of interesting. Again, it's practice, I know, but there are still a lot of takeaways. Some injury notes to bring up here as well. Got to get into that as well. So some things to discuss on that front. Unfortunately, that is the nature of the sport. We do have those injuries. And then later on, we will be breaking down every position group with the Kansas City Chiefs. Quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, all the way down the list, including these specialists. So make sure you guys tune in because that is going to be a big chunk of the podcast and a lot of talking points from that segment. Also, Ja'Marr Chase refuses to say Patrick Mahomes' name. Interesting. It's always that Bengals fan base that talks about rent-free. They play the rent-free card. Yeah. Pretty sure Patrick Mahomes lives in Ja'Marr Chase's head rent-free. We'll get into that later on as well. I want to let you guys know you guys can call into the podcast. If you guys want to call in with your thoughts, comments, questions, whatever it is you want to ask. I just commented with the link below in the chat there for both Facebook and YouTube. So make sure you guys click on that. Just turn on your camera. You can do it from your phone. You can do it from laptop, tablet, whatever it is you guys listen and take the show on during the live portion of it, at least. And you guys can call in with your thoughts, questions. Let's chat it up as we get closer and closer to the season. I believe we're just 1 week away from the Hall of Fame game in Canton. So yeah, Houston and Chicago. That game is going to be starting up really soon, so I'm very excited to see that. Yeah, it's preseason, but come on, man, you gotta take in that early football. All right, let's get right into it because we got a lot of things to discuss here. Patrick Mahomes been slinging it a lot lately in training camp. The first day of practice with the veterans present, Patrick Mahomes threw a deep bomb to Xavier Worthy. This got a lot of people's attention. There were some people, and when I say people, I'm talking about people who either talk about the sport for a living on ESPN, FS1, wherever, or former players. I'm talking about those people. A lot of them were pretty impressed with him. A few pushbacks saying, hey, look, it's practice. But for the most part, there are a lot of people that were pretty impressed by this throw and had a lot of things to basically felt pretty good about the way Patrick Mahomes threw the football, how Xavier Worthy looked on that route, all that stuff. Xavier Worthy, we'll get into him later because he has missed 3 practices in a row with an illness. We'll get into more on that a little later. But without Xavier Worthy, and this is kind of been the topic with the Kansas City Chiefs and their wide receivers, if Rice is suspended or if there is an injury, what happens to the receiving corps? Will it still be the same? Well, Patrick Mahomes has been continuing to do the same thing he's been doing for a majority of his career, which is throwing the ball deep downfield. Did it with Rashee Rice, did it with Hollywood Brown, had to play with Kelsey. Nico Remigio had a very impressive play with him today. Had to play with Justin Watson, who suffered an injury as well. Like I said, we'll get into the injury front a little later on. But Patrick Mahomes has been throwing the football deep a lot, downfield a lot this training camp. And don't take my word for it. Adam Teicher, who's been covering this team forever and is entering the final year of covering this team, he tweeted something very interesting. So, and I don't have it in front of me, but word for word, but something to the effect of how, he has seen Patrick Mahomes throw the ball deep many times in the past, but never this much in training camp. Never this much. I saw Aqib Talib do an interview, and he said he thinks that this Chiefs offense is going to be more dynamic than the offense the Chiefs have had in the past with Tyreek Hill. Pretty interesting endorsement there, and this is coming from a defensive back who knows a thing or two about great quarterback play. Went up against Peyton Manning a lot in practice when Peyton Manning joined the Denver Broncos. So, definitely a guy who knows what he's talking about, and Aqib Talib. And I just kind of wonder to myself, because I said this earlier this offseason when they started adding Matt Araiza, Louis Rizamet, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, like all of these players that they've been adding. And I've been thinking to myself, man, this Chiefs team really has a lot of speed and a lot of exciting players to just really account for here. Brought back the entire defense. The defense, there's nothing I'm really interested in seeing with the defense this training camp or in preseason games, because I feel like the defense is going to be virtually the same. You have your entire pass rush back. You lost Willie Gay, but I think a lot of people are pretty confident in who the Chiefs have at the quarterback position. Trent McDuffie bowling out in training camp like he always does. He's in Super Bowl form. Jessica, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, whoever that was, he denied in the end zone. And Willie Gay, I mean, those are your only two losses on defense. I think Leo Chenal can do what Willie Gay has been doing. I think Josh Williams and Jalen Watson are capable of filling in for L'Jarius Sneed. I know Spags is very high on Nazeeh Johnson, who tore his ACL last year in camp and missed all of last year. So a lot of the focus really to me is on the offense, because we know what the defense is going to do coming off a phenomenal season. So I've always been the guy that doesn't really go crazy for highlights in OTAs and in training camp. I remember, what was it, last year or the year before? Justin Ross ran a route in OTAs, and the Chiefs filmed it and put it on their social media page, and they did it in slow motion. And people were freaking out on the internet. Oh my God, looks like a great route. Guys, it's in slow motion. He's not going up against the defense. Like, I don't go crazy for training camp and OTA, any practice footage, any practice highlight. I just don't go crazy for. But I did say this year that, to me, this is going to be a very interesting offseason with OTAs and training camp, because there are a lot of new names, a lot of interesting names. I already told you, Hollywood Worthy, Reese Lightning, guys who are going to bring something to the table that Patrick Mahomes never had before. He's had speed before, a lot of speed. I mean, who can forget the first Legion of Zoom with Mecole Hardman, Tyreek Hill, and Sammy Watkins? This might be a much more faster group. I mean, Travis Kelce's one of the faster tight ends in the NFL. Hollywood Brown's got an intense speed. Mecole Hardman, one of the faster guys in the NFL. And then you have Xavier Worthy, who broke the NFL Combine record for fastest 40. Isaiah Pacheco, coming out of his draft class, was tied for the fastest 40 time. And we've seen him utilize his speed a little bit in years past. So this is a very, and you have Kadarius Toney too. And listen, who knows what's going to happen with KT. And we'll get to him a little later on, because there's some interesting news coming out of him with what the Chiefs are doing with him so far in camp. This is a very interesting group. And I know I have beat this discussion to hell with the wide receivers and the speed and all of that stuff, but Let's be completely honest here. Do we care? Do we need to see anything from Patrick Mahomes specifically in terms of his skill set? No, he's Patrick Mahomes. Do we need to see anything from Travis Kelce or Isaiah Pacheco? No, we know what we're getting. We need to see anything from the interior offensive line. Well, maybe on the left guard side, because Joe Thuney may not be available for week 1. We don't know yet. Do we need to see anything from the defensive line? No, you got the same guys back. Every single defensive lineman you had last year is back this year. A lot of your defensive guys are back. Only 2 guys are not returning. And, you know, as good as those 2 players were, Willie Gay and L'Jarius Sneed, that's not going to change your defense a whole lot. I think the defense will take a little bit of a step back, but again, it's not going to be anything noticeable. Might be a little noticeable on the stat sheet, but that's really it. And guess what? If the Chiefs defense takes a little bit of a step back, but the offense makes a big improvement this year, perfect. That is what I would prefer. I'll gladly take a little bit of a step back on defense so the offense can kind of rise and take over, because the offense didn't do its thing last year. And what was the reason for that? The drops. A lot of drops. Kadarius Toney, Justin Ross, even Travis Kelce was guilty of it. Justin Ross, everybody. Rashee Rice had some fumble issues. Ball security was a concern for the Chiefs. And when you look at how the Chiefs have looked so far in camp this year, again, it's practice, so take it with a grain of salt. But I don't know if this is going to look any different in a game. Because all the things that I'm expecting from the Chiefs in games this year, they're doing it in camp right now. Patrick Mahomes is throwing the ball downfield a lot in training camp so far, more than he has in years past. And this is what you want, because we didn't get much of that last year, either because Patrick didn't trust his guys or just didn't feel comfortable making those throws down the field because the defense, you know, was giving him a hard time at times, and it was just not Kansas City's year. Oh, and by the way, they won the Super Bowl still. I ran into a listener at Westport over the weekend, chatted up with him a little bit, and he was asking me, he goes, "What do you think about this Chiefs team?" I said, look, the Chiefs had the most penalized offensive player in the NFL, the most penalized defensive player in the NFL, and they led the NFL on drops, and they won the Super Bowl. Their roster on paper, and I know games are not won on paper, but their roster right now already looks way better than it did last year. So if you can win the Super Bowl last year with all of those issues that you had, with the penalties on the most penalized offensive and the most penalized defensive player, the most penalized, or the team that led the NFL on drops, and you can win the Super Bowl still in that manner, what are you going to do when you actually have the best personnel on the field? This might be the deepest team offensively and defensively we've had in the Patrick Mahomes era. The most frustrating thing about the Patrick Mahomes era, and I feel like this is a perfect reflection of the franchise, historically speaking, it just feels like the Chiefs can never have a balance where they always have a great offense and a great defense. It's always like whenever the Chiefs are great, one or the other is just not good. Like, for example, in the late 60s and early 70s, the defense was far better known than the offense. That's why there are a lot of defensive players in the Hall of Fame than the offensive players. Obviously, Lenny's in. Otis Taylor should be in. Ed Buddy should be in. Jim Tyree, we know what he did and why that's preventing him from being in the Hall of Fame. But still, I mean, that unit back then was known for its defense. And then in the 90s, when Marty Schottenheimer got to town, Joe Montana for a couple of years. But in general, what was Marty Ball known for? The defense. That's what dominated. And then shortly after the Marty era, when Dick Vermeil came in a couple of years later, you had the offense that was carrying the team and the defense not able to really keep up. And then after that era, the dark era from 2007 to 2012, Andy Reid comes in. Well, in the beginning, the defense was better than the offense. And in the Patrick Mahomes era, the offense was better than the defense, except last year it was the defense that was way better than the offense. So to me, it's just like this whole situation with the Chiefs historically, we can't get that balance where both the offense and the defense are going to be in the top 5 in total offense and total points. I think this is the year where we see that happen. This is the year, like, look at this offense right now. And I've said this many times, but who's stopping this Chiefs team? What defense can stop them? My brother, who's not as much as into the X's and O's than I am, we were talking about this earlier this week, and I was on a whiteboard. I was showing him. It's like, okay, you have Hollywood Brown and Travis Kelce to your right. To your left, you have Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. And right beside Patrick Mahomes, because the Chiefs do line up with the shotgun a lot, Mahomes is not under center as much as he is in the shotgun. You have Isaiah Pacheco next to you, who's very fast and can do a lot of damage. Okay, you can. Who do you double team? Pick a guy. Okay, you want to double team the best tight end in NFL history, Travis Kelce? Okay, you got 2 guys on Travis Kelce. Cool. You want to double team someone else also? Okay, you want to double team, let's just say Hollywood Brown, a veteran who has dynamic speed, maybe just 1 notch below Tyreek Hill in the speed category. Okay, go ahead. Who's going to defend Rashee Rice? Are you going to really succeed at defending him one-on-one? Who's going to stop Xavier Worthy one-on-one? And if you have all of these defensive backs spread out worrying about these pass catchers here, guess what? All you have to do is audible to a run and Isaiah Pacheco will take over. I've said this before and I'll say it again. The Chiefs are going to have a lot of audibles this year because they're going to see defenses not stacking the box, respecting the receivers pretty much the way that they should. And that's going to open up the door for Isaiah Pacheco to get like a halfback draw and get a lot of easy yards this year. That's what's going to happen with this Chiefs offense. There's no, I mean, the sky's the limit with this team. What happened last year is not going to happen this year. Are receivers going to drop passes? Yes. Every NFL team goes through drops. Okay. That's like, every NFL team commits penalties. Okay. I don't know an NFL team that has committed 0 penalties or an NFL team that's committed or had 0 drops all year long. You're going to have those issues. Every team will, but more teams will have it more than others. But I just think this Chiefs team right now is going to be far better this year than it was last year, offensively speaking. And listen, I definitely criticized Matt Nagy, Connor Embry, the wide receivers coach, and Andy Reid. Like, I'm sure the coaching staff told the receivers, all the pass catchers, I should say, because it wasn't just the wide receivers alone. I'm sure they told them, look, you can't be dropping the damn ball all the time. So I'm sure it was addressed, but was it addressed enough to the point where we saw improvement on the field? No, we didn't. We still saw drops and fumbles in the Super Bowl. So from week 1, all of the issues the Chiefs had carried all the way to the Super Bowl. And they won the Super Bowl, by the way. Again, I'm going to remind you guys of that. See this shirt right here? That's the Super Bowl 58 logo in the corner there. The Super Bowl 58. The Chiefs won that. And they had all of these issues last year. Well, what if you find a way to nullify or at least limit those mistakes? You're playing much better football this year. You're absolutely going to play much better. David says our coaching in general is top notch. I agree. I mean, listen, Andy Reid has done a very good. I know a lot of people make a big deal about Bill Belichick and his coaching tree. Yes, Belichick has had a lot of coaches kind of expand and become head coaches, but a lot of them did not have any. Who's the most successful head coach from the Bill Belichick tree? I kind of want to say, and his name escapes my mind right now. Brian something. Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien Bill O'Brien had a playoff win with the Texans. And then a week later they blew a 24-0 lead to the Chiefs. Andy Reid has had Doug Peterson move on and Matt Nagy move on and become head coaches. Yes, they both got fired, But before they both got fired, Nagy won Coach of the Year, and Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl with his backup quarterback. Oh, by the way, the starting quarterback from that unit is on this team. And I was listening. I was listening on NFL Sirius XM NFL Radio, and Pat Kerwin. They were talking about trying to have depth. And at the end of the segment, he said, "Guess what? That's why the Chiefs went and got Carson Wentz, because Carson Wentz knows Andy Reid's offense from coaching or being coached by Doug Peterson. Ran the same offense in Philly. So." This is a team. And that's another name I forgot to mention. Carson Wentz. I know a couple of you guys were mentioning him in the comments. That's a guy that I'm actually looking forward to seeing a lot of in the preseason, given what he's done in the past. I thought he was on his way to an MVP season before his injury in 2016, 2017. I can't remember exactly what year it was. So I think it was 2017 now that I think about it. So in general with this Chiefs team, this is, a team that's found a way to always bring in the best coaches. And yeah, Nagy didn't do too well last year as the offensive coordinator, and you saw it on the field. But, what's been done this offseason to address all of those things and to emphasize the need for improvement? We don't know that answer because we're not there behind closed doors. I certainly would love to see what this Chiefs team is going to do to be better. But at the end of the day, this Chiefs team is going to be way better than last year. And here's the crazy part. That Chiefs team last year wasn't even that good, and they won the Super Bowl. So what's going to happen when they display a much better offense this season? They're going to be much better than last year. Defense is just going to take a tiny step back. So I'm very excited to see what this Chiefs team is going to do. Again, if you guys have been listening to me for a long time, you guys know very well, I do not get excited about practice highlight reel. I just don't. I can't get behind it. I remember, and this is not a shot at Chiefs fans for doing this kind of thing, because I get it. Like, it's the off season, you miss football. It's a sport that we all love, but going crazy over a Justin Ross highlight reel when there's no defense, it's like, okay, I can't get excited about that. That's not anything that I care about. Like, nobody. I don't know. I get a lot of people's excitement for that stuff. Not me. That's just not something I get excited about. But this year, it's hard to not get excited about the Chiefs with everything they've got going on. All of the offensive guys, when you look at the receiver room right now, and, we'll see what happens with the Justin Watson injury. It does not look very good, if we're being honest. But when you look at what Mecole Hardman might do, Mecole Hardman in years past has been kind of relied upon as one of the top receivers on the team. Now, again, provided there are no injuries with your core three guys, he's probably going to be more of a depth guy than anything else. So I'm very excited to see what this Chiefs offense is going to look like moving forward with the receivers and how much better they're going to be this season. Scott's asked a really good question. Are you concerned about left tackle? Yeah, I mean, you have to be. That's the most important position if you have a franchise quarterback. The Chiefs have not had a good left tackle in quite some time. They had Donovan Smith last year. He was not very good. They had Orlando Brown the year before. He led the NFL in pressures allowed his last year with the Chiefs, and also led the NFL in pressures allowed last year in his first year with the Bengals. So you just don't have that left tackle that you need. Wanya Morris came in, had some good moments, but had some really bad moments as well when he went up against Max Crosby and Trey Hendrickson. But he had some good moments against Max Crosby as well in the first meeting. So Wanya Morris had an up and down rookie season last year. Came in midseason. And listen, I thought Donovan Smith actually played better when he got back from injury in time for the playoffs. I actually thought he played much better in the playoffs than he did in the regular season, for sure. But it was time to move on from Donovan Smith. And I believe he's still available, which to me is pretty crazy. But I think the Chiefs have very well moved on from him, though Brett Veach did hint that if they feel like, neither left tackle is progressing or there's an injury, yeah, there's a possibility of a reunion with Donovan Smith, but I don't anticipate that to be the case. I know the Chiefs have been moving Lucas Niang around. I mentioned this in the past with Niang. I thought in 2021, when it was Humphrey in the middle, Trey Smith on the right guard spot, and then Niang at right tackle. Now, Niang did not play in 2020. He opted out. so his rookie season was 2021. So the Chiefs had a rookie from center to right guard to right tackle, and they played very well. Niang played great up until his injury. Now they're experimenting him in all these different spots. We've seen him at left guard, filling in for Joe Thuney, which I thought was interesting. Then he played a little bit of right tackle today with the ones. Thought that was very interesting as well. I don't know if Jawaan Taylor, because I'm not seeing a whole lot about Jawaan Taylor from the media. From what I've seen, I mean, Jawaan Taylor does not look terrible. I know David's mentioning right here, get back on schedule and no first team holds. Listen, last year was a weird year for Jawaan Taylor. I remember the Chicago game where the Chiefs were winning in the Taylor Swift debut, if you will. They took Jawaan Taylor out of the game because they kept picking on him with the penalties. They told Prince Tega Wanogho, of all people, Prince Tega Wanogho, to go do the exact same thing, which he did, but he wasn't penalized for it. I thought that was a little weird, but I don't know, man. I mean, sometimes I remember going to basketball camp one year, and the high school, a lot of kids were complaining about fouls and the refs calling this and that, and said, look, sometimes you just got to adjust to what the referees will allow. Like, you might not think it's fair, but you just have to deal with it. Otherwise, don't play the sport. That's just kind of the way things work sometimes. Yeah, bad officiating happens in the NFL. Shocker, I know. Yeah, I'm seeing all of these comments here about what the Chiefs are going to do personnel-wise, how many wide receivers. I don't know, man. How many wide receivers the Chiefs are going to take into the regular season. Well, let's let's continue here because Kadarius Toney, I think we got to get into this a little bit. KT is being used in different ways, which I think is being blown out of proportion by the media. So they had him do one rep with the running backs during drills. And then they had him go back to the wide receiver group. And everyone on the internet's going crazy about it. It's like, calm down. It was one freaking rep. It's not like he's been taking Isaiah Pacheco's reps away. I mean, come on. Like, chill out a little bit here. These are all people who are not at training camp, by the way, that are going crazy about this. The media that's at training camp that even talked about this, it's hardly a story from them. But in the national media, the people who are not at training camp are making a big deal about this, which is funny to me. A little bit of a training camp scuffle today. I don't know if you guys saw this. So Kadarius Toney, who has been, making some plays here and there in training camp, he caught a pass, was trying to get away from the defender that was guarding him, and Karlaftis came from behind and delivered a pretty hard hit. Not one you want to see in practice from a teammate to another teammate, but Karlaftis did that. Toney reacted pretty insanely and actually threw the football. Looked like he was trying to aim for his head. Kind of hard to tell from the angle that is on the internet there, but that is what Kadarius Toney did. Travis Kelce, shocker, came over and he had some words for Karlaftis, and he did shove someone. It's hard to tell who it was. It did not look like Karlaftis. It's hard to kind of tell because you see a lot of white jerseys, which is the defense, kind of get in the area there and try to separate Kelce from Karlaftis. A lot of people mentioned Kelce last year punching Jack Cochran because Cochran, for whatever reason, felt the need to punch the football out of Kelce's hand after a touchdown play had been called, which I don't blame Kelce one bit for his reaction, but come on, you don't need to hurt your hand punching someone's helmet. I always think that's the dumbest thing when NFL players get into a fight and they punch someone else's helmet. You're going to hurt yourself more than you're going to hurt the person you're trying to punch. That's just dumb. I mean, come on. I get it. It's the heat of the moment. It's training camp. You've been around each other for too long. You want the pads on. You're tired of going up against each other every day in practice. You want to go up against someone else, but don't be punching someone's helmet. You're going to hurt your hand doing that. I mean, I don't know how many times it's happened, but it's going to happen one of these days. It just will. But let's keep things going here because the injuries, this is what I want to get into here. So Xavier Worthy has not practiced for the last 3 days. He is dealing with a strep throat. Everyone's going crazy about this. Oh no, Xavier Worthy's missing practice. Guys, relax. It's a strep throat. He probably needs to I mean, listen, I know COVID protocols are not a thing anymore, but maybe some of that needs to be applied here so you don't get the rest of the team sick, because all of these practice reps are very important. I know it sounds like they've got a lot of practices here, but in reality, I mean, coach, you ask any coach this, a lot of them will tell you that they feel like there's not enough practice sessions. So you definitely don't want to get someone else sick, and hopefully he's feeling better and will get back as soon as possible. If it was like another hamstring injury, or he broke his hand again like he did in college one year and still played through it, by the way, then yeah, I'd be a little concerned. I'd say, okay, what's going on here? But no, it's an illness. It's not like he suffered an injury of some sort. But again, kind of like we mentioned earlier, even though Worthy has not been practicing the last 3 days, Mahomes is still going out there throwing deep bombs to Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, Nico Remigio also, which, by the way, I think we kind of need to get into Remigio a little bit now, because Justin Watson, unfortunately, today suffered a left foot injury, slipped very awkwardly on a route with the ball being thrown to him. He needed help off the field and then eventually was carted to the locker room. It did not look listen, whenever you need to get help off the field, and when you have to get the carts involved, that is a pretty good indication that this is going to be a long-term injury. I don't like to speculate too much, but just from what I've seen historically with these kinds of things, that's generally the protocol there. So if, let's say, Watson's not available to go in week 1, that opens up the door for a lot of these receivers here. Let's just say it's going to be 7 receivers like last year. And obviously last year's 7 receivers were not good, but you're going to have a much better set of 7 this year than last year. Let me just say this. And again, I saw some people in the comments kind of talk about this. So Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, we know those are the top 3 guys. Mecole Hardman, we know is going to be another guy on that team. I think Kadarius Toney is going to be sticking around. So I'm at 5 right now. Who do I not have yet? Justin Watson, who I'm just going to put Justin Watson on IR right now to start the season. Sky Moore is out there. Justin Ross, Nico Remigio, Phil Brooks. No, not CM Punk. You have Montrell Washington. You have Cornell Powell, who's still on the team. Yeah, I mean, I don't know who the last 2 receivers are going to be. I think it's going to be Nico Remigio and Justin Ross. So even with a Justin Watson injury and to potentially have him start the season on IR, I don't know if Sky Moore is going to make this team. In fact, Sky Moore has struggled more than any receiver so far in camp. He's probably been the least productive receiver so far in training camp. So to me, my whole thing with Sky Moore is, why is his progress taking so long? Why is he not progressing? Because we're kind of at a point right now where if you're the Chiefs, you had this guy for a couple of years and he's just not making those steps to move forward. You might just need to take an L on this one. Say, look, we drafted this guy in the 2nd round. He's not panning out the way we want him to pan out. We got to just cut our ties, take this as a loss, and move forward with what we have right now. I know some people have kind of pushed back against that this offseason, saying that Sky Moore, he's on his rookie deal and that might financially be a good thing for the Chiefs. Yeah, but is that really the price you want to pay? Maybe not financially, because, yeah, sure, Sky Moore might be cheaper, but I mean, I don't know if I want Sky Moore taking a roster spot over Nico Remigio, and that's assuming Remigio has a good preseason like he did last year. I'm not sure. Justin Ross, again, I know a lot of people are kind of hoping that he can live up to the hype. Maybe going to be a little hard to do with a crowded receiver room, but I think a lot of people would rather see Justin Ross and Sky Moore. I'd rather see Montrell Washington than Sky Moore. Montrell Washington actually has the speed and possesses a skill set that could do damage to opposing defenses compared to Sky Moore. I even trust Kadarius Toney more than Sky Moore, if you can believe that. I just think Sky Moore's days could be limited in Kansas City. Every team is required to have a wide receiver named Moore, David says. Sky Moore isn't doing well because I bought his rookie card. Oh, that's always how it works. Did you see the video about Sky yesterday, Antoine? It's asking. Yeah, I think where he kind of just slipped and I mean, it just wasn't able to make a play on the ball. He's had a couple of those so far in camp. Dan says, don't we know what Sky Moore is and isn't at this point? I think when you've had a player for 2 years that you drafted, I think, yeah, Dan, I do agree. I think 2 years is a pretty fair window for measurement on what you have in a player here. Justin Ross, I know a lot of people will say, well, what about Justin Ross? He's been here for 2 years. Yeah, he has. But I think with Justin Ross, his first year, he didn't play. Last year, he did play, but not a whole lot, not many snaps. So I think the jury is still out on Justin Ross, but I do think this is his last year. You gotta show us something. And I think he did last year in the preseason. I actually thought Justin Ross did look good in last year's preseason. It just didn't carry over into the regular season or even in practice. I still remember Albert Breer in his Monday Morning Quarterback talk for SI.com talking about how Justin Ross is struggling to get a grasp of the offense in practice. Why? We don't know why. Hopefully, he spent a lot of time this offseason to try to do better about that. David's asking, is Noah, by the way, David won our most recent giveaway. He should be getting that. Should be in his hands within the next couple of days. So David told me that he's going to put up a picture of that. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that. Is Noah Gray gone? No, I don't think Noah Gray's gone. I know the Chiefs really like Noah Gray. A lot of people forget this because in 2021, you had guys like Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, Nick Bolton outside of the first round, but you also have some guys from that draft class who are still sticking around today. You still have Cornell Powell, who I mentioned. I don't think he's going to be on the team this year, but he's still on the team now. I mean, the guy's been sticking around for quite some time. Who else do you have from that draft class that doesn't get talked about a whole lot? Noah Gray, yeah. And the Chiefs have used him a little bit more and more each year, I feel like. He played more than Blake Bell did, which I was a little surprised by because I think with Blake Bell and his pass and what he's capable of, you can do more with him. But the Chiefs decided to use Blake Bell more. Or I'm sorry, Noah Gray more than Blake Bell. Sean Wharton, I believe, is also from that 2021 Chiefs draft class. And he's a guy that's been involved with this Chiefs defensive line for quite some time. Let me just double check on that. That's Josh Kendo that I'm confusing him with. When was Treshaun Wharton? Treshaun Wharton. I got him mixed up with Josh Kendo, who I don't think is on the team anymore. When did the Chiefs get? He's from Missouri S&T from St. Louis. He went undrafted in 2020. Okay, I guess I'm getting him and Josh Kendo mixed up, but neither here nor there. I mean, I think, but to answer your question, I don't think Noah Gray's gone. Yeah, you're right about that, David. Let's see. Dan's asking, do you think we are going to see much of LRZ in the preseason, perhaps especially? Yes, I do think Luis Rees-Zammit is going to be the guy you see a lot in the second half of these preseason games. I don't know how the Chiefs want to. I think it's important to kind of mix him in a little bit with the number one to see how he does with Patrick Mahomes, because the thing with LRZ is the guy's got great speed, and for someone his height, I mean, he's a pretty big dude. This dude is a phenomenal athlete. Had a bright rugby future, but decided to give that up to give the NFL a try. I don't think the Chiefs are going to give. I know there are a lot of people who think that LRZ is there for show and that this is more of like an attention grab. I don't think so, man. I don't think Andy Reid is going to let LRZ go. And if LRZ gets cut, hypothetically speaking, I guarantee you, like, whoever you think the worst team in the NFL is right now, New England or Carolina, they will get him. They will 100% get him. But, and David just kind of mentioned this right now, he might be a very important part of the special teams unit. And Dan, I know that was also part of your question as well. especially with the new kickoff rule, the rugby style kickoff rule. I think the XFL did this one year, or maybe that's what they've always done. You definitely need LRZ for that. And I'm very interested in seeing what this team is going to do special teams wise, because Harrison Butker is not expected to be involved in kickoffs. It's going to be Justin Reid or LRZ for kickoffs. That's going to be very interesting. And given that Justin Reid, by the way, I forgot to mention this also, Justin Reid has not been practicing yet. He's dealing with a quad injury or leg injury of some sort. He had a sleeve on his leg the first day of camp, but didn't have it the second day or that point on. But I think I just don't know how much time he's going to miss. Jason Anderson of A10 did mention that it could be all of the preseason, maybe even the first week. And I'll tell you right now, that would be a concern of mine. I don't know what it is with Justin Reid and Chiefs fans. I feel like he is the most unfairly criticized Chief. I've never understood the criticism for this guy. I never have. And I get it. He's filling in big shoes. Tyrann Mathieu, before him, it was Eric Berry. But Justin Reid's a guy I do not ever want to go up against. That's the same guy who lit up Tyreek Hill in the playoff game a few years ago when the Chiefs and Texans were playing and the Texans got off to that big start, which they thankfully blew. But man, I just don't know like what the criticism is with Justin Reid. No, he's not a top tier safety. But damn, man, he's not a guy that I ever want gone unless I can replace him with someone better, which is not very easy to do. So I'm just very curious to see. A lot of Davids in the chat. Yeah, you got 3 different Davids. Okay, it is a David convention on tonight's episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. So that's definitely good. By the way, if you guys want to call in with any of your comments, questions, anything you want to get off your chest and you guys want to call in, feel free to do so as we are doing that now for the podcast. Another injury to talk about real quickly, Nazeeh Johnson. He didn't suffer an injury of any kind, but the media just noticed he was suddenly being evaluated by the training staff for his right foot. Or his right knee, rather, same one that he tore in last year's training camp. However, the media later came out with some sources that spoke up, and it turned out that he left practice early, but it is not anything serious. It's more precautionary than anything else. So that is the good news on that front right there with Nazeeh Johnson. He's expected to play. Spags has always had a lot of great things to say about Nazeeh Johnson, and we haven't seen a lot of him. And keep in mind, he's part of a draft class in 2022 where the Chiefs drafted a bunch of defensive backs: Trent McDuffie, Josh Williams, Jalen Watson. Like, you've had a lot of great cornerbacks from that draft class that have contributed, which is why, I don't have a really big concern with L'Jarius Sneed moving on. I think those cornerbacks will do a good job filling in for him in the upcoming season. So, fortunately, it's not a big deal, according to the media, with Nazeeh Johnson, and he is expected to be back at practice later this week. The Chiefs are off practice tomorrow, so they're going to get their first day off. The first day off with the veterans there. So that'll be good. Before we move on, I do want to play this clip here. Ja'Marr Chase of the Bengals. Obviously, the Chiefs and Bengals have a non-divisional rivalry here, a conference rivalry, I should say, going on the past few years. And as you guys know, the NFL Top 100 list is being revealed every day for the next few days. And Ja'Marr Chase was asked who he thinks is the number 1 player in the NFL. Listen to this.
Who is the number 1 player?
On the what? I'm not saying him. I give credit when it's due, but I'm not saying his name.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Yeah, you do. I'm not saying his name, brother. I'm sorry. Joe Burrow. I'm not saying that guy's name. He's good. He's amazing. He's good. Not gonna lie. I'm salty though. A little salty. 2 years in a row. But I'm putting Burrow first.
2 years in a row. Patrick Mahomes lives in Ja'Marr Chase's head rent free. It's funny because last offseason, because I guess this is kind of where this all started in the back and forth. Well, not really much of a back and forth between Patrick and Ja'Marr because Patrick doesn't care, and I'll get into that in a moment. But Joe Burrow was asked in a press conference who's the best quarterback, and he's like, it's Mahomes until someone can beat him. And this is coming from a guy who beat him, and all the fan base, all of good old Cincinnati there love to talk about 3-1 because that is the only Super Bowl banner they can ever hang. But even the guy who's beat Patrick Mahomes head-to-head 3-1 is saying Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback. And by the way, that was before Super Bowl 58, mind you. That was after Super Bowl 57. And then Ja'Marr Chase gets asked the same question the same day by, I guess, the same reporter. And Jamar's response was, Pat who? So in the ring ceremony that offseason, Patrick Mahomes holds the 2 Super Bowl rings and says, that's who, responding to Ja'Marr Chase. Now, I guess obviously later when they played this year, Ja'Marr Chase leading up to the game between the Chiefs and Bengals, he said nothing impressed him, about the Chiefs defense. And what does he do? He lays a freaking egg. Oh, he had the backup. So what? I'm pretty sure Bengals fans were excited about how Browning was playing as his time as a starter went on. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, during the 3-game winning streak, didn't the Bengals average 31 points per game with Browning? Like, I don't think that has anything. You were not complaining about a backup quarterback then. And by the way, what was the score in the game with Jake Browning against the Chiefs? It was 17-7. And for as much as Bengals fans love to talk about how the Chiefs offense wasn't great, well, you lost to a kicker in that game. Congratulations. A kicker outscored an offense with Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Well, I mean, shout outs to that fan base. When they were leading against the Chiefs with Jake Browning, no issues with the backup quarterback. But when the Chiefs surged back with their kicker, they complained about having a backup quarterback. Yeah, sure. Because I'm sure Orlando Brown would have absolutely protected Joe Burrow from Karlaftis in that game. Yeah, 100%. By the way, like, why can he not say his name? I don't get it. Like, what are you doing? Meanwhile, Patrick Mahomes was interviewed during the week of the Super Bowl by a young reporter. They always bring a kid reporter to these events. And the kid reporter said, which wide receivers would you like to have on your team? And the rule was Patrick cannot pick any active teammates. So Patrick picked Tyreek Hill first, which made sense. And then Patrick's second pick was Ja'Marr Chase. So here's Patrick Mahomes admitting that he would love to play with a guy like Ja'Marr Chase. I'm sure he would have last year. And meanwhile, Ja'Marr Chase is too afraid to say Patrick Mahomes. But he got punked by L'Jarius Sneed last year and all the talking he did. This is a guy who does way too much talking than he really should. He talks shit about the Browns, calling him the Elves, and he even admitted it after the game. I mean, credit to him with his sense of humor. After the Browns humiliated the Bengals in week 1, what was it? Ja'Marr Chase said, I called them the Elves, and we just lost to the Elves. And then, he said that he was not impressed by the Chiefs. And the team that he wasn't impressed by pretty much shut him down in that football game. What do you have, like 2 or 3 catches? And he had been balling out with Jake Browning the last few games, so I don't know why that was any different. I know Bengals fans were saying, Ja'Marr was injured. He was limited in practice. Well, L'Jarius Sneed didn't even practice that week either. Or not, I shouldn't say either, but just didn't. But he was also dealing with an injury, so even playing field as far as I see. But hey, good to know that Ja'Marr Chase, he letting the world know that he's salty. Patrick Mahomes lives in his head rent free. Oh boy, poor Cincinnati. I mean, the fan base that plays the rent free card harder than any fan base on this planet. They just listen to their wide receiver who talks a lot of shit admit that he's salty about getting eliminated by the Chiefs 2 years in a row. Congratulations. Let's take a time out from all of this training camp talk here and give a shout out to our sponsor, SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the place where I go to for all of my sports ticketing needs. Got to see a couple of years ago the Jayhawks downtown in the Big 12 championship game. Went to a couple of Chiefs games last year, the week 1 opener against the Lions, and on the road to see them play the Raiders in Las Vegas. Went to a couple of Royals games this summer as well. Got to go to WWE Raw here in Kansas City. That was my first WWE event in 15 years. All of that because of SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the place where I go to for all of my sports ticketing needs. Keeps you honest. They show a green dot next to the ticket prices that are worth buying, means you're paying a good price for them. If you see a red dot, that means you're paying too much there. So do not buy those tickets from resellers. That's what I like about SeatGeek. Keeps you honest, lets you know if you're getting the best bang for your buck. And if you guys want to save $20 and you're a new SeatGeek customer, you can use my promo code FARZINE. All you have to do, if you're a new customer, pick your tickets at checkout, enter the promo code FARZINE, and you will save $20 off your first purchase from SeatGeek. Go to SeatGeek.com, select your tickets, and new customers at checkout can use the promo code FARZINE for $20 off their first purchase from SeatGeek. By the way, before we get started here and go to our position breakdown, something very important that I forgot to mention. Because obviously, you know, it's very clear that you know, Patrick Mahomes lives in Ja'Marr Chase's head rent free. And by the way, Elena, the answer to that is no, it does not apply to just sports tickets. Whatever's available at SeatGeek. You just have to be a new customer. So, but hey, David, you can't create a new account, but you didn't hear from me, even though it's on the record. But here's what I will say. So, you know, Patrick Mahomes lives in Ja'Marr Chase's head. You know who else lives in Ja'Marr Chase's head? Anyone know? Who else lives in Ja'Marr Chase's head? Oh, me. I live in Ja'Marr Chase's head rent free. Look at this. Has me blocked. Ja'Marr Chase has me blocked. I am in that guy's head rent free. So it's not just Patrick Mahomes he's worried about. He's also worried about Chiefs fans like me. Has me blocked. So good to know. Good to know, Ja'Marr. All right, let's get right into it. I want to break down every single position group with the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll start with the offense, go to the defense, and we'll wrap up with the special teams unit. Let's start with the quarterbacks here. You have Patrick Mahomes, obviously the MVP. I mean, there's nothing to be said there. Nothing more needs to be said about Patrick Mahomes. But you have Carson Wentz, which is very interesting. But God forbid anything happens to Patrick Mahomes. Carson Wentz is a guy you can actually rely on because he knows this offense from his time in Philly, playing under Doug Peterson, who was the offensive coordinator of the Chiefs before moving on to Philadelphia. So if anything were to ever happen to Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs do have a viable option in Carson Wentz. The Chiefs have always been very good about bringing in veteran quarterbacks to back up Patrick Mahomes. And it's always a guy who's older. Matt Moore, Chad Henne, Blaine Gabbert. We didn't see much of Blaine Gabbert last year. But man, whenever the Chiefs have needed a backup quarterback to step up, they have. And I think Carson Wentz can be the guy to do that. As far as Chris Oladokun and Ian Book, I think Chris Oladokun is going to be that guy who's going to be your practice squad QB. He does a very good job as being a fill-in quarterback. They did it last year when he was pretending to be, you know, Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson when the Chiefs defense needed to be able to practice against a speedy quarterback. And I'm sure they're going to do the same with Chris Oladokun when they get ready for that week 1 game against Baltimore. So I think those are going to be your 3 quarterbacks. The running back position is very interesting. Isaiah Pacheco is obviously your starter. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is back, which surprised a lot of people. But I think he also did some things last year to surprise the Chiefs. Yeah, I know the Chiefs offense wasn't very good, so it wasn't a very high bar to set anyway, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a little bit more reliable than some of the other offensive players on the team. You don't have Jerick McKinnon back. Could he come back? Maybe, but that seems very doubtful at this rate unless you have an injury bug going around the running back room. You have Deneric Prince, who was able to show off his speed a little bit in last year's preseason. You have Carson Steele an undrafted free agent who's got some speed as well. And obviously the big name on this list is Luis Rees-Zammit. A lot of people are very excited for this kid. They want to see what he can do. I think he's going to make the team. I really do. I think this is somebody who is going to be able to give the Chiefs another weapon to use. And look, the whole route running thing for him, I think, is going to be his biggest challenge. So I think it makes sense for him to start off at the running back position. I really do, because that is where I think he's going to have an easier time. Whereas if he lines up as a wide receiver several snaps a game and having to do all these routes, not saying he's not capable of it, but that might be too much to throw at him when he makes this transition from one professional sport to another. But I think he'll grow as he goes on in the NFL. And I would not even rule out the possibility of the Chiefs using him in that fullback position. Chiefs did that a little bit last year with backup tight ends, but I think this time around they're going to use LRZ, maybe some of those situations where they would need a fullback because they don't have the traditional fullback anymore. The tight ends, we all know about Travis Kelce. He's the best tight end in NFL history. And behind him, you have Noah Gray, who's been learning under Kelce for the past couple of years. And he's now at a point where he's got a very good grasp of this offense. And the Chiefs have been using him more and more during his time in Kansas City. You also have Jared Wiley, the rookie from TCU, 6'6", very tall for a tight end. This is definitely someone who can do some damage to an opposing defense if he gets into a rhythm with Patrick Mahomes. I don't know how many snaps on average Jared Wiley will play per game. But man, if he can just get a grasp of the offense, because I don't know if we're going to see a lot of him his rookie season, because I think this Chiefs offense is going to be more focused on utilizing Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, and Rashee Rice, because I think that's going to be the big priority, along with Travis Kelce, of course. But if he can just kind of learn this offense his rookie year and, be opportunistic whenever his number is called, I think that'll be a really good rookie season for Jared Wiley. You also have Irv Smith, who the Chiefs brought in from Cincinnati. You have Baylor Cupp, an undrafted free agent. You have Isaiah Gaithings, who's been around the team a little bit. I'm not sure who the number 4 tight end is going to be if the Chiefs have a number 4 tight end. In years past, the Chiefs have had Kelce, Gray, Jody Fortson, and Blake Bell as their 4 tight ends. Could they have a 4th tight end this year? I don't know. I think they might opt out of that 4th tight end and try to keep 4 running backs to try to keep LRZ and maybe even a guy like Deneric Prince. So I think it's going to be an uphill battle for a guy like Irv Smith Jr. to try to make the 53-man roster. Going to the wide receivers, I mean, it's just way better than last year. You have Hollywood Brown, who's got great speed. You have Xavier Worthy, who broke the NFL record for the fastest 40 time in NFL history. Obviously, dangerous speed. You have Rashee Rice. His speed, not as big as Hollywood Brown or Xavier Worthy's, but a guy who can definitely do some things. Obviously, broke the NFL record last year for most receiving yards in a postseason for a rookie. So definitely someone that you can build around and try to help this offense move forward. Obviously, we're waiting on the suspension news. Clark Hunt talked earlier this week, and it sounds like Rashee Rice is not going to be suspended this year. He does have a court date in December. Keep in mind that's not a sentencing date, so that's going to be much later on, well after the Super Bowl when the Chiefs three-peat. So any suspension that will come for Rashee Rice probably won't be until 2025. So he's expected to play this season without a suspension. You have Kadarius Toney, who the Chiefs are going to give another chance to. Justin Watson has good speed, great depth player. We'll see what happens with his injury. But Mecole Hardman, this is another guy whose progress has not really gone as expected, but that's not a guy you ever want to give up on either. This is someone who can make big plays and do a lot of damage to a defense. Absolutely capable of that. And I'm excited to see what Mecole Hardman does as a depth player with this unit on this team. Because if you have Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy covered, double teamed, well, that it's going to open up the door for a guy like Mecole Hardman if he's on the field as a 4th or a 5th receiver. So I'm excited to see what he can do. in this offense. You got guys like Justin Ross, who has potential. Nico Remigio has potential. Montrell Washington, with his speed, I would say he has potential as well. This is a unit that has a lot of potential, a lot of speed, and it's going to take the load off Travis Kelce and Isaiah Pacheco, and those guys might even have an opportunity to do a lot of things now that they've got a lot of other teammates that are more reliable. Defenses are going to have to respect this offense. They have to. Can't do it last year, have to do it this year. Offensive line, starting with the left tackle, obviously that's the biggest one people are keeping an eye on the offensive line. Wanya Morris, Kingsley Suamataia. I think the Chiefs are going to go with Kingsley Suamataia to open up the 2024 season. They traded up, and I know it's just one spot, but they traded up one spot to get Kingsley. And this is a guy who was pretty good in college. And listen, Andy Reid, I mean, he loves him some BYU guys. Now, I'm not saying he's going to start him just because of that, but in general, I mean, those guys at BYU do pretty well. So I think Kingsley Suamataia is going to be someone who the Chiefs are going to want to see a lot of this preseason. And if he can prove himself in these preseason games, I think he's going to get that starting nod September the 5th against the Baltimore Ravens. Joe Thuney, we don't know who's going to be filling in for him. We've seen Mike Caliendo serve as the starting left this week. We've also seen Lucas Niang, who is more of a right tackle than a left guard, but the Chiefs are experimenting with him at that spot. So the Chiefs are definitely going to see what they can do. I really hope Joe Thuney can stay healthy, because this guy might be the best interior offensive line in the NFL if healthy. So hopefully he can come back and get ready to go, or at least limit the amount of games he misses, because the Chiefs absolutely need him this year. Creed Humphrey, I mean, listen, Joe Thuney might be the best interior offensive lineman in the NFL, but his teammates are not too far behind him. With Creed Humphrey, maybe the best center in the NFL the past couple of years. With Jason Kelce retired, definitely the best center now. Right guard Trey Smith. I mean, this guy's a monster. I'd rather get hit by a train than get hit by Trey Smith. This dude absolutely reminds me of Willie Roaf. I mean, Willie Roaf was an offensive tackle, but Trey Smith just reminds me so much of Willie Roaf. He is the Willie Roaf of the guard position, in my opinion. The dude's a monster. And I think if they ever wanted to move Trey Smith to tackle, which I don't think they ever will, but if they ever wanted to, I think Trey Smith would thrive in that position as well. And then you have Juwan Taylor, who did win a lot of his position battles, had a high win block rate percentage, but yeah, had a lot of penalties as well. The pre-snap penalties, I mean, I think that was pretty bogus, but as far as some of the other penalties go, with the holding, the illegal block in the back, taking touchdowns, I think he took 2 touchdowns away in the postseason from Rashee Rice, or maybe one from him, one from Trey Smith. Got to be better about that. Those kinds of things. Cannot make those kinds of mistakes, especially in big games in the playoffs. You can't be doing that. So that is my breakdown of the Chiefs offense, going through each position group. Let's go to the defense. The defensive line might be one of the best in the NFL right now. George Karlaftis, another year under his belt. He's been part of a Super Bowl winning team every season since he's been in the NFL, and he's been pretty damn good. Mike Dana had his best season last year. Charles Omenihu was suspended for 6 games, but when he did play, I mean, he was lights out. He had 7 sacks in about 10 or 11 games. That's pretty good for a guy who was very limited last year in the amount of games he could play. And then you have Felix Anudike-Uzomah, the KC kid, who didn't play a whole lot, but man, when he did, he stepped up. In that Super Bowl against the 49ers, he had a couple of nice stops against Christian McCaffrey, easily the best running back in the NFL, the reigning offensive player of the year, the Madden cover boy. So I like what I'm seeing from the defensive ends. And who knows if we're going to see Frank Clark come back or not. I know that rumor has been out there for quite some time. But for right now, who the Chiefs have at the defensive end positions, I think is going to serve them well as the season goes on. Chris Jones anchoring that defensive line right in the middle. Derek Nottie has been around for a very long time. He's on the PUP right now, but eventually should come off and is going to be part of this team. Mike Pennel, a very underrated defensive tackle. It just feels like whenever Mike Pennel returns to the Chiefs end up winning the Super Bowl. He joined the Chiefs in 2019. They move on to win the Super Bowl. He was a big part of that defense, improving their run-stopping defense. And he joined the team last year as well, helping that defensive line get the push it needed to advance and eventually win the Super Bowl. I mentioned Treshaun Wharton. This guy's been around for a few years now. You also have Neil Farrell, who the Chiefs traded for in a very rare in-division trade from the Raiders. And they obviously see something in him if they wanted to give up a draft pick to get him. So this, in my opinion, might be the best defensive line in the NFL. Karlaftis, I think, is only going to get better. Hopefully, things are going well with Charles Omenihu's rehab, because once he comes back, I don't think defensive or offensive tackles are going to be able to stop him. He's a pretty damn good pass rusher. And Mike Dana, FAU, I mean, they'll be able to fill in and do just fine while Omenihu is absent. Going to the linebackers, this might be Nick Bolton's last year. We don't know for sure. Nick Bolton, he's considered one of the best off-ball tacklers in the NFL, or excuse me, off-ball defenders in the NFL. Drew Tranquill, easily one of the more underrated linebackers. The things that Drew Tranquill did last year for the Chiefs defense didn't show up on the stat sheet. But if you watch the games, if you study the tape, the eye test, that is where Drew Tranquill thrived the most. And he came back on a very friendly 3-year contract. And I think that's huge for the Chiefs. And that might spell the end of Nick Bolton. We don't know yet. The Chiefs have a lot of contracts to figure out in the next 12 months. But what I do know is that this is a very good linebacking duo with Tranquill and Bolton. And I'm very excited to see Leo Chenal. Leo Chenal got involved on a lot of pass rushers in the first half of last season. And he got involved a lot last year in the first half because there were some injuries involving Nick Bolton and Tranquill at different times. So Leo Chenal got involved more than expected. But once you had Tranquill and Bolton and Willie Gay all healthy, you didn't see much of Leo Chenal. I know Leo Chenal missed on a very easy sack he should have had against Lamar Jackson, which led to a touchdown in the AFC Championship game. Hopefully he's been better about that, because this guy went after the quarterback and did very well. I truly believe that if Leo Chenal was an edge rusher instead of a linebacker in the 4-3 scheme, I think he would be able to do well in that position. I really do. So I'm very curious to see what Leo Chenal does, because I think Leo Chenal can be just as good as Willie Gay when it comes to stopping the run. That's what I think of Leo Chenal. Now, those are your 3 starting linebackers. Backups go. I mean, we don't really know a lot about any of these guys here. I mean, you have Cam Jones, who was on the team last year. You have Jack Cochran, who's been around a couple of years. Cole Christensen, been around a couple of years. And then you have some undrafted guys. Swazi Bozeman, Curtis Jacobs, Luke Quay Washington, a lot of unknowns with the linebackers. So I'm not quite sure who the 4, 5, or 6 linebackers are going to be. I think that is an area that, isn't being talked about as much as it should, because if Nick Bolton gets hurt again, if Drew Tranquill gets hurt again, who are going to be the guys who step up? That's going to be very important for this Chiefs defense in 2024. And then your secondary, maybe the best secondary in the NFL. Unfortunately, Justin Reed's dealing with an injury. We don't know the extent of that. It has not been confirmed, but the rumors are he's expected to miss all of training camp and the preseason. You have Brian Cook coming back from a leg injury he suffered Sunday night against the Green Bay Packers. Deion Bush, I think, is a very good backup safety. You also have a guy like Shamari Connor, who was very versatile last year, playing some safety, playing some slot corner. You're going to see a lot of him in the nickelback position this year, 100%. The Chiefs ran more nickel and dime packages than any team in the NFL last year. And Spags loves to blitz with those defensive backs. Did a lot with McDuffie, did a lot with Justin Reed, did a lot with Shamari Connor, and you're going to see more of that this year. I'm very curious to see who ends up being the number 2 cornerback opposite of McDuffie with Johnson, Watson, and Williams. I think those are 3 good cornerbacks, all of them from the same draft class. And all of, specifically Watson and Williams, have had some great moments. Specifically, the AFC Championship game in 2022 when the Chiefs beat the Bengals. Joe Burrow did not face any pressure, and yet threw 2 interceptions, both to rookies at the time. One to Jalen Watson when he turned around and adjusted, made a great leap to snag the ball away. And then the other one to Josh Williams, got the nice little friendly tip from a teammate Who was that guy? Oh, Brian Cook was the other guy. Both rookies. A rookie tipping it to another rookie. And that was great. And again, no pressure whatsoever on those two interceptions. And those two guys did a good job there. Nick Jones is the guy who the Chiefs drafted last year. Iko Boy-Doe, who went to K-State. He's actually a very fast quarterback. Not fast enough to be on the special teams return unit, but someone who, if you use him in blitz packages, he could get after the quarterback. But he's got to wrap up and bring him down. So I'm very curious to see who the Chiefs keep. You also have Kamal Haddon and Jaden Hicks, defensive backs who you drafted in day 3 of the draft. Let's see what those rookies can do to try to help contribute and fill in for guys like Mike Edwards and L'Jarius Sneed. So that is the Chiefs defense in a nutshell from me. Last one here, the special teams unit. I'm excited for Matt Araiza. I'm telling you right now, I want just one drive in the preseason. I want the Chiefs to be backed up inside their own 5. So I can see Matt Araiza punt the football from his own and delivered as far as this guy has a cannon for a leg. You guys already knew that, though. Harrison Butker coming off his best season ever. He's the best kicker in the NFL right now. No question about it. In terms of NFL history, he is 1.1% behind Justin Tucker for best field goal percentage in NFL history. Harrison Butker owns 2 Super Bowl records. One is longest field goal in Super Bowl history, took it away from Jake Moody 30 minutes after Moody did it. And the other record Harrison Butker owns is most field goals all time in a career in Super Bowls. Obviously, the Chiefs needed him more than they would have liked to use him, but man, when they needed him, he came through. He only missed 2 kicks last year. One of them was allegedly a deflated football in Foxborough, of all places, if you can imagine that. Winchester, been around the team pretty much the longest. It's been him and Travis Kelce, the longest tenured Chiefs. One of the better long snappers in the NFL. And as far as return specialists go, you have Xavier Worthy, Kadarius Toney, McCole Hardman, Luis Rizamet, Montrell Washington, guys who have a lot of great speed here. I don't know who your kick returner and punt returner will be. I think for kick returner, it's going to be either Worthy or Luis Rizamet. For punt returner, I think it's going to end up being either Kadarius Toney, McCole Hardman, or Xavier Worthy. It would not surprise me one bit if the Chiefs rotate these guys actively, unless there's one guy who is going to be the clear-cut dominant returner. Like if someone is playing as great as Dante Hall was, or Devin Hester, like if you get that kind of returner, then yeah, there's no need to rotate guys. But man, I see a lot of potential for a great season with the special teams unit, both with kickoffs, field goal kicking, punting, long snapping, and the return game. I feel really good about all of that. I think the Chiefs are going to have the best special teams unit in the NFL in 2024. 100%. So that is my position breakdown. Every single unit, offense, defense, and special teams. I'll read a couple questions here before we sign off. Dan says half of KC wanted Butker fired in 2023. Yeah, he had a very tough 2022 season. And I kept saying that year, it's like, look, he slipped and injured his ankle in that Arizona game. And before he actually exited the game, he made a 54-yard field goal, stutter stepping to make that field goal. And Butker was inconsistent that year, no question about it. But what did he do? He made the game-winning kick from a very long distance in the AFC Championship game to send the Chiefs to the Super Bowl. And then he made the game-winning field goal in Super Bowl 57. He also made the game-tying Super Bowl this past year. And I know it was a chip shot field goal, but man, both the game-winning Super Bowl 57 and the game-tying Super Bowl 58 field goals were both chip shot field goals. But I don't care if you're at the 20-yard line or 50-yard line. The amount of pressure in that moment to not miss that kick is huge. And Harrison Butker came through. Cold as ice. That's why, in my opinion, he's the best kicker in the NFL. Who has more sacks this year, Chris Jones or George Karlaftis? I got to go with Chris Jones. I think George Karlaftis is going to have a very good season. And let me just double check real quickly on George, because I don't think George Karlaftis has had a double-digit sack season yet. And I think this is going to be the year. Oh, he did last year. I apologize. He had 10.5 sacks, so barely surpassing that. If you remember his rookie year, he got off to a very slow start, but did have a lot of pass deflections. Karlaftis is one of the better defensive ends when it comes to getting his hand up and trying to get a piece of the football. His rookie year, he had 6 sacks, but he went off in the playoffs. I believe he had a sack every game in the playoffs as well, his rookie year. And this past year had 10.5. Chris Jones, I think, is going to have a monster season. I know Chris Jones is talking about 20 sacks. I don't think he can get that. I'm not saying he's not capable of it, but that's just a very tall order. So I'm very curious to see what he does, but I think Chris Jones is going to have the most sacks in 2024 for the Chiefs. I wouldn't be surprised if KT didn't make the 53. Remember, Andy Reid is a player's coach, but he despises guys that run their mouth on social media. Yeah, but if you got the talent, man, I think Andy Reid can find a way to work around. Listen, Andy Reid's obviously been well known for being the guy to give second chances to a lot of guys. He's been that guy. I just think Andy Reid will figure. Here's the thing with Kadarius Toney. I was listening to the Pat McAfee show when the Chiefs got Kadarius Toney, and they said that Kadarius Toney got comparisons to Tyreek Hill entering the NFL draft the year before. And I think someone had a tweet saying, don't let Kadarius Toney get drafted to the Chiefs. And that tweet resurfaced because he ended up getting traded to the Chiefs. Listen, I know Giants fans have very strong opinions about Kadarius Toney, but this guy did deliver big in the Super Bowl against the Eagles. Here's the crazy part. I thought about this today. Kadarius Toney has the longest punt return in Super Bowl history, and Harrison Butker has the longest field goal made in Super Bowl history. Not that there's a correlation there. I guess the correlation is they have a great special teams coach in Dave Toub. A lot of people don't know this, but Dave Toub was also the special teams coordinator for Devin Hester in Chicago. Oh, maybe maybe coaching is a real thing. People forget this sometimes, man. I mean, coaching does matter in the NFL. It's not just head coaches, but the position coaches as well. Gary says, is this the best receiving core Mahomes has ever had? It's really, listen, rookie Mecole Hardman was good, like really good. That year he had Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins. I remember people were not excited about Sammy Watkins. I personally was. I still remember Sammy Watkins' rookie year in, I think, 2014, because that was the year the Chiefs did not throw a touchdown pass to a wide receiver. And I was like, man, I'd love a guy like Kelvin Benjamin or Sammy Watkins. And oddly enough, they both ended up playing for the Chiefs. But is this the best receiving core? I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to call it the best yet. I think in terms of overall, like when you consider everyone on the receiving corps, it might be the fastest. Like, yes, Tyreek Hill was fast and is fast still, but there weren't a lot of guys behind him that had the immense speed that Tyreek Hill had or close to it. Sammy Watkins and Mecole Hardman, but Byron Pringle was fast, but wasn't electric fast. You have four electric fast receivers: Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, Mecole Hardman, and Kadarius Toney. And I think Montreal Washington too, but I don't know if Montreal Washington is going to crack the 53. Rashee Rice, he's got good speed. It's not the kick return, punt return type of speed, though. It's not. It's not that kind of speed. I don't know if I'd call it the best yet, but man, it has the possibility to be the best. I'm excited to see this position group this year. I really am. Listen, I know there are a few naysayers out there with this position group. Get ready. I mean, get ready, because that is going to be a very fun group to watch this year. I really am. Hey, I have a question for you guys before I get out of here. Obviously, we don't listen. Let's just be honest, and this is no disrespect to backups, but the preseason is not that exciting. There's a reason why the ratings for the preseason are not as high compared to the regular season. It's just not exciting football. So we always want to see the starters. That's just human nature. Like, that's what we like, right? But I need to know from you guys, when you watch Chiefs preseason games this year, because I've been debating this in my head, how much of the offense do you need to see? And when I'm talking about the starting offense, I'm talking, Mahomes, Kelsey, Worthy, Rice, Hollywood, Pacheco, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, those guys. How much of those guys do you need to see? Obviously, we need to see a lot of Wanya Morris and Kingsley Suamataia. We need to see, how those two are going to do. But in terms of your core offensive guys, your key players, how much of those guys do you need to see this preseason? I'll just say it right now. I don't expect this to be the way Andy Reid does it. I need one drive, and I don't care if it's a 3-and-out. Even if it's a terrible 3-and-out drive, or if Mahomes throws an interception on the first play of the drive. I only want the starting offense to be out there for one drive. I don't want to see a second drive. I just don't. No. What reason do I need to see more than one drive of Patrick Mahomes in the preseason? Why do I need to see Travis Kelce? Maybe for the sake of, my fandom. Yeah, sure. But I just don't want to risk injury with this team. I really don't. I can see Andy Reid picking the second game where the starters play 2 drives. Fine. And then I can see these starters not really playing that third game. That's what I think is going to happen. Dan says more important to see combos like Mahomes to Worthy and Brown. We don't need to see any Mahomes to Kelsey. You wrote machines to Kelsey, which is funny because I've had that autocorrect as well. I think Adam Teicher had that once, and a lot of people lit him up for it. Elena says we want to keep our starters safe and healthy for the season. Yeah, see this now. I've seen a lot of people say this. I've seen people say we should never see Patrick in a preseason game ever. Okay, I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, look, I don't want everyone to see an injury, but if an injury happens on the first drive of the game, it's like, well, shit. That's the nature of the sport, unfortunately. But just please limit the amount of drives they play. Please. I don't need a lot of Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, I'd like to see Patrick, toss the ball up there to Xavier and to Hollywood, as Dan was kind of saying. Get those two new guys acclimated against a different defense. You're going up against a different team. But once you get, a couple throws in there, run it out, finish the drive, do what you need to do. Don't do anything crazy and avoid injury. That's my biggest thing, man. I do need to see a lot of Luis Rizamet in the preseason. I definitely need to see him and what he's going to do. I'd like to see Clyde Edwards a little more in the preseason, see if he can kind of get into a rhythm. Justin Ross, maybe. I don't know how much of McCole Hardman we'll see in the preseason. Justin Ross and Nico Remigio. Actually, I do need to see Sky Moore, because I don't know what kind of a player Sky Moore is. I mean, I guess we kind of do know. Excuse me. But if we want, if Sky Moore is going to make the team, I guess he has to have a good preseason, does he not? I feel like that's his only way of making the team is to outplay Justin Ross and Nico Remigio. I feel like he has to do that, because right now with Justin Watson's injury, I do think there is an open door for somebody if the Chiefs are going to keep 7. So I'm very curious to see what the Chiefs do with that unit this preseason. Which wide receivers get the most snaps? Very curious to see. Just wanted to know what you guys thought. Just wanted to see how you guys would feel on that. Robert says, we have an early bye this year. I'm more worried for the second half of the season. Need that first round bye. Yeah. And what's nice is if the Chiefs can get the Christmas game against the Steelers, if they can wrap up the 1 seed that day on Christmas, you have a very significant break from your week 17 game to your week 18 game. And then you could get number one seed before, lock it up before then. That'd be huge for the offense, for sure, and the defense. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I agree with you, Robert. That'd be huge for sure. Elena says we want to see the new rookies players in preseason and those who need employment, such as KT. Yes, for sure. What would you get for more in a trade? I don't know. I mean, would a team like New England or Carolina, and I don't know who else would be right behind them when it comes to bad teams, would the worst AFC team and would the worst NFC team, would they offer a 7th round pick for Sky Moore? I don't think they would. I don't know if Sky Moore would be worth it. But if one of those teams felt the need to do so, I'd do it. You want to give up a 7 for Sky? Have Sky. He's yours. I don't know what the odds are of that happening though. Unless Sky Moore goes off in the preseason, and if he goes off, well, I guess you kind of want to keep him then, don't you? Then who's trade bait? Maybe Justin Ross. Maybe he can go to another offense and try to showcase his skills. I don't know. Not sure. It's going to be a very interesting preseason for the receivers. Very, very interesting with the starters, the backups, the guys who could be used for trade bait. It's going to be very intriguing to see. All right, guys, that'll do it for this episode of the Chiefs Zone Podcast. My name is Farzin Vousoughian. I appreciate all of you guys tuning in to this episode of the Chiefs Zone Podcast. You guys are awesome. Bringing it each and every week with your questions, comments, all that good stuff with the interaction. There will be a Red Friday live chat this Friday, so make sure you guys tune into that. I will be taking all of your questions that night. That'll be 7 o'clock Central Time, so do not forget that. We will be doing the Red Friday live chat then. Otherwise, I will talk to you all later. Peace out. Take care.